very good afternoon to you, and thanks for joining us again on our program on television, African Discourse. My name is Evan Sunokugi. Well, today on the program African Discourse, we are going to all the way to South Africa to look at the political developments in South Africa, whereby the president of South Africa, in the person of Cyril Ramaphosa, is in the eye of the storm. As we speak now, there is a scandal against him, and he stands to be impeached. As a matter of fact, we understand that in another few days' time, the ANC, that's the African National Congress, his party, they are going to be taking a final stand, a final position on him to see whether he can contest for 2024 election, because that's when they're supposed to change their president. Well, we all know the story how Cyril Ramaphosa came on board sometime in 2018 when Jacob Zuma was accused of the same corruption issue for the fact that he did not heed to suggestions as suggested by his party. Then, of course, he was asked to step down. The big question is, what kind of political lessons the rest of the world are to learn from what is going on in South Africa? Well, for Cyril Ramaphosa, it is the case of about 580,000 US dollars. And we're told that the certain amount was found in his farm. And there's a certain whistleblower that blew it up, that that money was actually stolen from his farm. So the big question is, how did it come, how did it come in touch with such money? Who put the money there, so to say? That's a big question that we're going to be asking on this program today. Well, to look at all this afternoon, we're so privileged to have Dr. Barrister Patrick Awo-Osaige. Sir, welcome to this program, African Discourse.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon, everyone.
Okay. All right, so just as we are talking about now the political situation in South Africa, so what do you make? It's another time for the ANC, the African National Congress, and of course the South African politicians to say one more time that the issue of corruption is actually not welcomed in South Africa.
Thank you very much. It's rather unfortunate that, you know, things keep happening in funny ways, especially back here in Africa, if you want to say. But South Africa have taken a stand that we should all commend them for what they have done over time. Right from the time of Thabo Mbeki, and we saw how he resigned, you know, and Jacob Zuma stepping aside, and now having to see Cyril Ramaphosa, who will be becoming president. It's a great thing for us to begin to do what is right. I don't see anything that is so spectacular about it. When somebody have done something wrong, you should own up and don't waste the time and further funds to run investigation and try to, like, legally, we always say, he's not convicted yet, he's not been indicted and all of that. You need to come up with concrete evidence, and then possibly some will say, okay, go to court and let's try it in court and put up a defense. I don't think all of that is necessary if we really need to do what we ought to do. Like in this case now, having the trunk of $4 million in his farm and, you know, with whatever circumstances, what is it doing there? That's not the bank in the first instance. If you have such money legitimately owned by you, it should be in the bank, and there should be some transactional link to the money. You know, how do we detect fraud per se? You know, when money is in large quantity that cannot be tied to anything, you know, just lying there fallow. So how do you explain it? Obviously, if he cannot give reasonable explanation, which he can't, he can't, regardless of what, you know, his image makers are saying around. Obviously, you know, South Africa is not other parts of the world. They are very, very sensitive, and the people, they are very, 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 you know, determined to get things done in manner. You saw how Jacob Zuma, how he all, you know, despite the many threats on those that were against him, it fell on deaf ears, and they went ahead to do what they had to do, and he was removed, and they even had to go on for prosecution and subsequently a conviction as well. So these are things we should learn from, things like this.
Okay. All right. So just about a few days ago that Jacob Zuma actually had to finish the jail term that he was sentenced to as a result of the also political situation that erupted, and of course that ousted him from government sometime in 2017. All right, so let's get to see the picture of Cyril Ramaphosa now, the South African embattled president. Let's get to see the picture so that you get to know him proper, and also we'll get to see him. All right, so as we kick on the discussion one more time, Dr. Awosage.
Yes.
Now, for Cyril Ramaphosa, he seems to be standing alone here. Only yesterday we understand that one of his spokesman in the person of Vincent Magwenya stated that he would never resign, because the call for him now is that he should resign. And Cyril Ramaphosa, we're told that he's so interested in contesting the 2024 election, their presidential election.
Absolutely.
All right, so before we got here, the South African Parliament had to set up a committee, and they investigated the allegation leveled against Cyril Ramaphosa, his farm and all that. And the committee came up to say that the allegation is not necessarily allegation. The committee came up to say that all that is leveled against him is correct, that it is true. Even the fact that Cyril had to say that is still an allegation. So the big question is, Ramaphosa standing alone, and his political party, the African National Congress, seem to be standing with the parliament, the South African parliament. It's as if the ANC has owned up. So the big question is, can Ramaphosa, can he pass through this storm? Can he succeed? Will he survive it?
Well, politics is always what it is to a great extent. Like he has said, it's still an allegation. No courts have convicted him yet, so it's still in the arena of allegation. Yes, even if you have your findings, it's, you know, it's as good as some documented fact that you have created or you sought from somewhere. I think the courts need to look at it critically and then give a substantive judgment on what they are saying. Probably his lawyers are also advising him to say, this is what it is. This is what it is. Maybe you have made a mistake or somewhere. Yes, I agree that there are constitutional grounds for you, although, again, the court has the power, the ground of everything to decide what happened thereafter. So if he is saying, I have not done anything wrong, I could explain all of this. Yes, if it's subject to explanation. There are times you may not be able to, or rather you would have to explain and let it be tested, with the law. And then we cannot come up to say, yeah, this is what it is. So for him to be this hopeful, to be talking tough or speaking from the way he's sounding, like I'm going nowhere, and obviously opposition will always come up to want to get you off, the office. They want to get in just the same way. It's politics, so it could be that. But my own concern, if it's about politics, it will be trashed out. But if it's an issue of fraud, as it were, I don't think it should still stand up, although we have seen several of our leaders performing or operating in like manner, trying to say, well, this is at the end of time. It turned out to be just like Jacob Zuma. We saw how he was convicted, and, prior to that time, he was also sounding in like manner that nothing was happening.
Cyril is sounding now.
The way Cyril is sounding now, that everything is all good and fine, we are good and we are okay, our people are happy with us, just the normal political talk. But I know in his heart of hearts, he understood, or rather understands clearly now, whether he has done something wrong or not. It's not for him to start saying, well, I'm not going to, I'm still going to run a subsequent election. You should think of what is going to happen now before you talk of the next election. You've not cleared yourself now. I think that is what he should be talking of now. But again, it's a good way to come out. You shouldn't just crumble. You should at least try to put up a fight. If he's looking at political, why would thieves break into his farm in the first instance to go get some money? I could also ask questions. Why would such money be kept in the farm? Is it a setup in the actual sense or what? So these are things that will be litigated. And after the litigation time, court will sit on it and decide. I think that's the only time we can all say, well, he has done something wrong. As at now, it's still in the arena of, allegation. And allegations cannot be converted to substantive court judgments, and nobody could be convicted on allegation. There's nobody that has not been alleged to have done one thing or the other around the world. Even in our country back home, we have had series of allegations against political office holders, including our, governors, presidents. This is what, I know of one now who is wanting to be president, and they said you don't have a certificate. There are some that say, well, you didn't rule well, you misrule, you mismanage your investment, and all whatnot they have said. That will not hold water. These are political jars. These are things they say to themselves while trying to discredit one opponent or the other. But the truth is that Why I'm saying we should not merge politics, we should not merge them together and try saying this is politics and fraud. If a leader in a party has defrauded the people, it should be shown the way out.
Okay. All right. Now the bigger question to also look at is that there's actually a particular section of the South African Constitution that says that once there are allegations against you,
Yes.
what you are supposed to do is to step aside for investigation. All right. So from people now, from political pundits, you may want to say, in South Africa, they seem not to be satisfied with the way Cyril Ramaphosa is handling the case. Now, let's take our mind back to Jacob Zuma sometime in 2017. When his case came up, it was still this Cyril Ramaphosa, one of those that spearheaded the investigation, and of course, one of those that pressurized Jacob Zuma to step aside. And look, we have it as a grand norm in this political party, in the African National Congress, that if you are leveled with any case of corruption, you step aside. But how come now he's bent on not stepping aside, and of course he's saying that he's going to contest the next election?
Thank you very much. Again, like I said, it's what they have there. It's not a law, And, you're talking about he should just step aside. Anybody can just come up with trump-up allegation, and then you don't expect him to just step aside in that regard. Probably he's looking at scenarios are not always the same. The level or what they're talking about now, the allegation against him now is quite different. There could be different scenario, and there are grounds why he's saying, well, no, this is not what we are saying, because the Constitution itself is not explicit in that regard. It's not as if they are, it's not tied to anything. It's what is noble of you. As a gentleman, you should just step aside and allow other persons investigate and check what's as. But he is also looking at it as it could be a way to opt him out, and then at the end of time, we need to know exactly. He's saying, I'm not going to step aside. Now, what will happen if he fails to step aside is what we should be considering. Basically, they come up with this allegation. They can file an action in court. Yes, they can go to court. If really they are not satisfied with what they have or what he is saying, now he is refusing to step aside, you can go to court and ask courts to interpret certain clauses in the Constitution with respect to this. And if court makes it a judgment that you need to step aside, then you can definitely. So that will not save him. That he is saying, I'm not going to step aside, is not enough for them to say, well, he has not stepped aside. Then if you really know what you are saying, the alleged offenses he had committed, then you approach the court. There are procedures, there are guidelines, there are lawyers that can do that. That's not a big nut to crack. Go to court and let court give judgment. And as soon as the court will give a ruling on that yes, should Cyril remain in office or he should step aside, then the ruling is followed to its stricter sense, and that's exactly what's going to be.
Okay.
So that in itself will open every day can of worms that probably may be hidden some way somehow. Will expose in the circumstance.
Okay. Now let's look at the posture of the ANC in South Africa, the African National Congress. Sometime in 2001, 2003, Tambo Mbeki had the same allegation, corruption allegation. The ANC urged him to step aside. Then sometime in 2017, we had Jacob Zuma also having an allegation, corruption case and all that. And of course, the ANC urged him to step aside. So for this one now, Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC, without being told, they really want him to step aside, undermining the fact that in another 1 or 2 days, they are going to be meeting to actually know whether he's going to be running for next election. So do you think the ANC is going to do a different thing this time? I mean, for a political party that is reputed, that is known for not want to support any government, so to say, that is corruption, driven.
That's what I'm trying to say. That's if he's able to clear himself. We have caucus meeting, we have large meetings, we have, caucus meeting, like Elias said. You don't know what he's going to tell them. If he's able to convince his house that, look, this is not what you think, and this is how it's looking like, I don't know why he has said he won't step aside. And if that is
with the South African Parliament already concurring?
Even if the Parliament concur, they could concur in what is not right. It's not, like I said, it's still not the judgment of court. It's still what they feel or what they have interpreted. Now, they need to, the ANC now, but I honestly, if you ask my opinion on that, If I were in his shoes, if you have no skeleton in your cupboard, you would just step aside and let them do it, the needful. And then you save your name. You know, for you to start acting in this manner, you're creating a lot of drama around the whole little scenario that is here. So that's what is even drawing the attention of the world to what is happening. You know, if you had just, okay, I heard it before, if you had just stepped aside, but now, you know, a lot of things, then you cannot even have enough ground to come up to defend yourself. Because when you step aside, it's for somebody to pretend and call you up to explain. And if you are not satisfied with that, you could also challenge that action in court, if you so decide. Because we have some of our people down here that love going to court. So it's always a way there are always ways to express your grievances. As one who has led a nation like that, you cannot just be whisked away. So for you to hang on and say, no, I'm not going to step aside, it speaks so much, you know, that we cannot really explain. Okay. And that in itself, it sounds suspicious if you permit.
All right, some of the feelers coming from the camp of Cyril Ramaphosa suggest that there seems to be some political rivals, the hands of some political rivals in other political parties, in order for this, scandal. I don't know what your opinions are on this.
That the rivals are trying to get
yeah, maybe they're just trying to rubbish him.
That has always been the norm. You know, like I earlier said, you know, I remember President Obama asking if Hillary had been doing her homework, you know, Bill Clinton would not have had anything to do with Monica Lewinsky. I wonder what that had to do with the presidential election. I heard him say that, a very gentleman,
well,
like in the person of Obama, would expect him to say that.
Let us be mindful of the way we say that.
No, what I'm trying to say, it was on air. I'm not the one that...
He's not here to defend it. So
no, we can get on air. If I'm called, I'm a lawyer, for goodness sake. I know what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'm speaking what is on air. It was on CNN. It wasn't what I'm cooking up. You know, if it was in his personal capacity of someone who is that savvy, very erudite, very intelligent, to come up with that. So it's obvious that a man that is at the shadow, that is there, is always being attacked. That is true. But if that, I can earlier establish that, yes, there are political rivals, people want to be president too. In Nigeria, asks everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry want to be president. Even with those that send SMS to delegates, they want to be president. You express some interest form, you got a form, and the next thing to reach your delegate is through XMS to tell them to vote for you. I say that's what we convey them to the venue. So these are funny folks and things happening around. What I'm trying to say in essence is it's true. But that in itself, you need to investigate. You need to come up with a robust report. And if one is not satisfied, you can go to court and let the court do justice to it. And when it's adjudicated on and there is a sounding judgment on it, everybody will go and rest. And that is what I'm talking about. That opponents and opposition are trying to get at him. That is very correct. But sir, I don't know if you did something wrong. If you had opened the kind of, done something wrong and you're now trying to hide under the guise of opponent, then it will be exposed. When due diligence in investigation, in trying to check the records and know how money, $4 million got to the farm, when there is no bank in the middle of the farm, because I didn't read about the bank in the farm. So if you have such huge amount of money, what is that money doing there? Yes, forget the guys that said we stole money here. Yes, how did that money get there?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Yeah, a big question.
So if we don't really need to go too far. Why I keep saying we go to court.
But again, I think we also need to bring to mind, because somewhere along there are various, literature concerning the story now. Somehow I read also too that Cyril Ramaphosa at a point owned up that what they are claiming to have been stolen from the farm is not up to that amount.
But that's not what we're saying, sir. Even if it's not up to, there's a common saying, I don't want you to tell me again. When the thief says that a section of the farm I robbed here, I stole, then that means the entire farmland had been infested by criminals. That's what I'm trying to say. If you own up that is not up to that, what is cash doing there?
In that farm.
In that farm. Because farm, to the best of my knowledge, is where we cultivate, we plant chemicals. Is it to pay chemical provider fertilizer
is
or
there
whatever?
A bank in the farm?
That is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Why did those guys who were supposed to receive the money, why did they not go to the bank?
Instead of going to the
I issue checks
farm.
too.
Yeah.
I do bank transfer. I do a lot of businesses. And I don't go to my farmland per se to go and start waiting for my customers to be giving me money. Even if you want to buy poultry stuff in my farm, for instance, you have to go to the bank. do your bank transaction. If need be, you come with your tellers, evidence of payment. Then you cannot get the goods you need to come, you have come to get. So the big question is not whether it's up to, how did cash get there? At least South Africa is some developed country. I've been there a couple
All right,
of
so
times.
if Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, if he survives this scandal now, so what do you think will portend for him in his future political ambition? I mean, he wants to run for 2024 presidential election in South Africa.
Well, it's a good thing. I like his person, the one I've known. Back in 2018, I was there when the Mandela Centenary was there with them. I was also there. I saw all he did, and there's somebody I like his person. And I remember the youths at the time in Joburg, they were complaining about a particular sewage they did not through, and they didn't get through, and they were everywhere. I could see the effort he put in, you know, to ensuring that was done. That's the little I know about him. I could see the gentleman in him, which I kind of like. But if he survives it, he should be more careful, you know, in dealing with people. Obviously, I remember something happened in our country, in precisely one of the state executive, precisely, remember the poultry saga of the then governor, and all that happened then. And I remember that it was even his closest ally, his close friend, that said this is what happened with the 2 billion for the poultry fund. And, you know, he was taken aback. Obviously, we cannot rule out the fact that some persons are trying to do some stuff against the president. But the truth is, are you sure you don't have a hand in some shady deals?
Yeah.
That's what we are asking.
Yeah,
if you do have a hand, then you have to go, regardless of how it came out. You're like, oh, why will you, my friend, expose me? It doesn't matter whoever blew the whistle.
Yeah.
So long something wrong has been done, we are not to protect you, we are to vilify you, and we are to ensure such person don't sit there and keep at the saddle.
Okay.
Hence, we'll be going to a very dangerous path.
All right, the program is African Discourse on independent television, and our focus this afternoon is South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, who came into power in 2018. One man that came into power, and a lot of people in South Africa actually thought that he will probably be the last person that will bring the last end to all the corruption issues in South Africa. But so disappointing. Well, let me also mind the way.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that.
Because investigations are still ongoing. So, but most people in South Africa, and perhaps in parts of the world, are not too satisfied with the way the issue is developing. All right, so we'll take a short pause. When we return, we're going to be looking at lessons so that we can learn from what is going on in South Africa. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you so much. Still African Discourse on independent television. And we're still looking at Cyril Ramaphosa, who is faced with allegation of corruption. We all know that it all started when a certain man known as the chief spy known as Arthur Fraser, who walked into a certain police station in South Africa and accused that he said, as a matter of fact, that robbers came into Cyril Ramaphosa's farm and stole, certain amounts of money. So the big question we're asking is, how did the money get into the farm? So let's look at it, narrow it down to Nigeria now. Some political lessons we can learn from the political situation in South Africa. Let's try to juxtapose it. Can we begin to have the situation that is, involving in South Africa and the political situation in South Africa in Nigeria? You think we will ever come to that?
Yes, we will. I don't think it's something that we won't come to. We will. It's just that the people, you see, the political education here, to a great extent, it's not holding several degrees from several universities across the globe. It's to know what's your rights. I remember in South Africa, for instance, I had a cab driver who drove me around, each time I needed to move around. And he said to me, you Nigerians, you have money, you rich people, you marry our women, and he was just talking like that. And then he said, and I talked about your election is coming. He said, yes, we, the South Africa, vote our leader. And I said, I'm coming to vote. He said, who are you to vote in our country? You see, it was somebody coming from a low level, but he had enough understanding that despite that I was a bigger man than he.
But you cannot vote.
I said, you can't vote. He said, are you, we? He said, we. He said, we vote our leader.
Leaders.
Not you. No matter what, that in itself alone sends serious message to me. Or can that happen in my country? Because what we look at the agbada the politician is wearing. We look at what is tied to his name. We look at where he had worked before and who he is around the world. That shouldn't be the idea. If he was that blessed and so buoyant like you think, why is he seeking the office? He still needs something he doesn't have. And that is what we should learn from. So the average South African understands that clearly, that when it comes to leadership, it's for them. So Nigerians should take a clue from that, and we will definitely get there.
Okay.
As we journey through this.
Yeah, when we ask the question if there are lessons we can learn from the political situation in South Africa, because we are trying to narrow it down to a typical Nigerian political situation.
Yes.
Take, for example, candidates of political parties.
Yes.
Political parties coming up to say that, hey, because you have accused of a corruption issue, you cannot run for our
That's not
party.
correct.
Just the way that is happening now. The ANC, they are not too satisfied with Cyril Ramaphosa. And in another few days' time, if they meet, they may not be, tendering him for 2024 elections. So do you think we can have that kind of situation in Nigeria?
You see, when we say meeting at that instance, the man can still contest it. I know, yes, you say it's a party issue. You know, they will not hide under the guise of party issue. But we have had situations whereby party turned down people and then they went to the court. And the court said, no, this should not be. It could just be a new matter that will emerge and then to just build up to becoming something that's changing the whole political system. That people have not been protesting or opposing the party structure or the party's decision doesn't mean that that's the final say. No, it could be litigated. That's what I'm trying to say. If he feels I'm being oppressed or some persons have put some money together to see how they can get me off office, then I can fight. And who knows how far it could get.
Yeah, but we're looking at it from the angle, the way it seems to be in this part of the world, whereby you have candidates that fund political parties. It is being said that most candidates, some candidates I should say now, fund political parties in Nigeria. So if you have that situation, can we ever have a situation whereby the party comes up and say to a candidate...
That's the beginning of the corruption we're talking about.
Okay.
Why should a party be in the hand of
an individual?
That's the problem. Somebody just crossed from one party and then spends money and then automatically is a presidential flag bearer. And these are some of the things we're talking about. And people are jumping saying, oh, it's wonderful, this is the best thing that has happened to us. That's it. If you have not been, I think the party system, we need to strengthen it. This idea of just moving from party A to party B, party D to C is something we should also check. I also understand that we have weak political parties in the actual sense.
Why do we have weak political parties?
Because individuals, institutions, Nigeria as a country, our institutions are weakened down by some elements that you and I know about. It's how the system runs. So we need to strengthen it. To strengthen this institution means we have to weaken these individuals.
How?
And that's how through legislative means, through legal means, and through genuine patriotism. I think that is basically some of the ways we could do that. And
maybe also allowing the political parties to actually fund candidates, not the candidates funding the political parties. That seems to be an issue in Nigeria.
You see, it's all about greed, if you permit me. When you're saying funding, what are they funding? Are you funding, if you're a member of a political party, there should be some contribution you could make to the party to keep the party running. There should be some ways to raise money to keep the party running. And there are a few staff you have to pay. And these are things we should look at. And who becomes, not one person, you start receiving money from individuals who are aspiring, off the normal money. What are you spending billions to run the political party, like you said? If we have said you want to nominate you want to run elections, as the case may be, you want to come in as this and that, we need to know you, profile you, and debate it within ourselves. And then, you go to the primary elections and all whatnot. And all of these things, it's not the party that should fund you to do that. You are the person that said you want to run. And we only give you nomination forms, and then if you emerge, fine.
Okay. All right, so let's
And
look
then
at...
we all put hands together and support you.
Yeah, let us also try to compare the Nigerian parliaments and the South African parliaments now, because we are trying to draw lessons that we can learn as, you know, a group of people, lessons that we can learn from the South African political situation. Here in Nigeria, we almost have a situation whereby the Nigerian parliament seems to be answerable to the executive. In other words, the Nigerian parliament seems to be answerable to the president.
That's how it is.
You know, but in South Africa, it's not like that. I mean,
I just told you what a cab driver said to me. Just imagine that. I'm not talking of somebody who is schooled. He lives in Soweto. He does driving for a living. He doesn't have anything.
And he understands the system.
That's what I'm trying to say, let alone one who is educated. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? But back here, you could have a professor who is answerable to some, you know, ignoble person, if you permit me, in the regard of, oh, one chairman up there has said he's the person. I remember, that's how people are picked. So if we have that, we say changing the narrative, it goes down to the people. And it will take me back to history. I will always mention Joseph Stanley. He actually said the masses and the leaders. He talked about bringing a chicken. He pulled the feathers, bleeding chicken, and started throwing the corn at the chicken. The chicken, and then was using a beak to struggle and drinking little water. I said, that's the masses. He said, that's how you treat the masses, weaken the masses, so that you can exact on them. That's what he was teaching them.
Perhaps
that's exactly what we have playing out in our country. So that's why you have people can't really say much, because the instrument of government is used against you. They could come overnight and say, well, your house is built wrongly, and then you start hearing people coming back talking about your building plans and your certificate of occupancy, the right to own certain property in some places like the Bongori saga in Abuja. You know, over the locations. Thank God for Michael Zeko Messi and who came to his rescue. You know, demolishing people's hard-earned money over because somebody had interest. Had interest, and he couldn't get it. And they had to use some governmental instruments to get at him. So these are some of the things we're talking about. So Aminu Kano said, this, if this until the son of a nobody becomes somebody by knowing nobody, Nigeria will never change.
Okay, so how do we begin to correct all these things now?
The correction starts with me and you. We have to say no to bribery. We have to say no to wrong leadership. We have to speak up when we see opposers, I mean leaders that are oppressive, that are diverting funds of government. We have to speak up.
Now, what do you think is wrong with the Nigerian presidential system? Because if you look at it one more time, perhaps it is only Nigeria that we have the presidential system, whereby we have the three arms of government clearly cut out, the legislature, the executive, and of course the judiciary. But the executive seems to always take it all.
They have so much power.
And that's the reason why when issues like this come up, the parliament cannot stand because the executive is always there. In South Africa, the parliament has even told, the parliament has concurred with the investigation that, hey, Ramaphosa, you are guilty. And if all things being equal, he's going out. But in Nigeria, we may not be able to have, I mean, we'll hardly find a parliament in Nigeria that we want to accuse the executive.
The truth is that I think since 1966, we've had this problem. When they are going around, see unitary government came on board. I think that's where the problem really started from. When we had to, when you now put everything at the center, you know, that's the beginning of the big problem. When regions were being controlled, regional control, you could see what Obafemi Awolowo did, you know, building university, television, Wembley Stadium, building Stadium, Liberty Stadium, and you saw what Dana Sokoto did also in the northern region. Look at how it has been run over time. So when this, we are now one, I'm here to decide at the center. That's how your 1999 constitution or our 1999 constitution is. So you can see the federal government holds sway in so many things that a little dispute back in the local environment is taken to Abuja for interpretation. That's basically where the problem started from. So until we revisit this and rejig this whole structure and get the right hands on board, other than this fraudulent structure that is not explainable in any other democratic system around the world. It's only Nigeria that have a unique and a very lopsided, very, very funny, democratic system.
Now, perhaps you may also want to say that the greatest challenge that Nigerians do have, I'm talking about the Nigerian electorate now, is that the Nigerian electorate may be able to vote the right president.
Okay.
They may be able to vote the right senators, the right members of House of Representatives and all that. But you and I know that at that very instance, that's where your power and my power stops.
Exactly.
I mean, I cannot vote who becomes the president of the Nigerian Senate. Neither can I say who becomes the Speaker of the Nigerian House of Representatives.
Yes.
But when these guys came, like for example next year now, after the election, the House is going to be inaugurated. The presidents most times always have influence, or who becomes the Speaker, who becomes the Speaker of the Senate President. And it is at that instance that you see whereby the cabinets, begin to capture the legislature. So how do we go in all of all
and
this?
like I did said, it boils down on your morality. It's for you to say, this is what I want. It's for Nigerians to start thinking. It's not all about what you can give to me. Because you are talking about capturing one person becoming Senate President, for instance.
Yes, so that
and then they now begin to talk to him. Now, listen, but that Senate President can be impeached. He can be impeached. So it's not an issue. Anybody could. Like we said in the Edo State House of Assembly when they inaugurated the House, we're not saying, oh, no, this other man that has showed up, we need to get him. Why is not, the House is not properly. Why did you order, my own advocacy was that, why did you not just join? Get into the House and then team up and remove him. It's as simple as that.
Instead of running
away
from the inauguration.
It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know who advised them. If I were to be, I would go there. Then we continue battling right inside until we do the needful. So it's not all about the president. It's about those men that are of weak character. There's not every man. I will continue to mention Ezeogo. After he escaped, he said a soldier man should not run away. It should not be heard that a soldier man absconded. And he returned back to be killed. So that's what I'm talking about. You should have morals. You should have strong character. We have men of weak character. That's why we have the problem we have. You're not going to live forever, but people are going to read about you. I went to South Africa to visit where Mandela was living, to know where they buried him, because I believed in him. I read his book, and I was inspired. And it spurred me to visit where he was resting. That's leadership. That's one who has inspired. Is there any Nigerian president after now that will want to visit where he's been laid? Is it not during the presidential primaries we had of, was it not Tafawa Balewa, our dear professor, vice president, was showing us where he was being laid? Do we even talk about them? These are things we are talking about. So if you have strong character, you have integrity,
strong institutions.
Strong institution, yes. If that is the strong character that we form the institution. You understand? There was a Nuhu Ribado in this country. And I know what the EFCC stood for. Governors were ditchery. Those that are ranting in the Senate now, with all respect to them. I know when Nuhu Ribado was EFCC boss, a lot of them were running, crying. There was a Moritala Yanko flying around, running. There's no longer fear, no fear anymore. Reckless acts. That, you cannot, you just do things at your own frolic, and then you say, well, you not hide under the guard, and a handful of people, you would not go on placard that they want to bring down your leader. What are you talking about? Everybody wants, we are all members of this common union. If I'm opposing you, I'm not opposing you because I have anything against you. We want a better Nigeria, a better state, and a better world. That's just it.
Okay. All right, so the program is still African Discourse on independent television, and we've been talking about Cyril Ramaphosa, the South African president who is facing a serious scandal that has to do with thefts, and of course, as we speak now, his political, respect, you may want to say, is at standstill. And in another few days' time, we understand that the African National Congress are going to be meeting. And it is on that time, on that day, that they are going to be deciding whether Cyril Ramaphosa will feature as their presidential candidates for next election. The next election in South Africa is going to be in 2024. That's about 2 years from now. So you see that Cyril Ramaphosa always is still there. You know, little wonder why the man is so bent on doing a second term. Must you do a second term? Why won't Cyril Ramaphosa behave like Nelson Mandela about Awosage?
That's the part. You see, like I said, leadership is how you inspire people. You know, Dr. Nelson Mandela was, you know, I just remember wearing an inscription of him, and everywhere I went around that program, people were taking selfies.
But before we continue, do you think Nelson Mandela actually left enough legacy down for his successors to learn from? I mean, we've had the likes of, what's his name now? Cyril Ramaphosa, he found an allegation, Tambo Beki, and of course Jacob Zuma. All these are successors of Nelson Mandela. So would you still want to say that Nelson Mandela left enough legacies?
He did.
So what has gone wrong?
He did. They just failed to concord to certain things and his value. You know, that's just it. You know, you cannot control the mind of a man. Even the Bible says the heart of a man is desperately wicked above all things. Who can decode what is there? So that's just it. So it has nothing to do with Nelson Mandela. If a man that was, you know, urinating on his head while he was held in prison, he could invite him for lunch. That's a man. That's how it is. The simplest and the kindest soul you can ever come by. That was Mandela. And they said, I can't continue. Let's leave it so that for others to continue. I'm too old. But here, we want to die there in the office. That's the problem. I think it's greed. I think, again, in as much as we blame the electorates, we blame the political class, we should also look at ourselves. What do we do to them? You call somebody, Your Excellency, from the first day in his office. Left for me, it should be thrown out. What do you mean, Excellency? Are you God? You're not. Your Excellency. And then the way we celebrate them, just check the jingles on television. Who do we invite to read 9 lessons and carol? Do you consider that traffic warden that have been on the road from January to December, controlling traffic? Will you invite him to read the jingle? That's where the institutions also aid it. And you know, who do we give honorary degrees to? Who do we? Do we look at somebody who have been committed in the civil service, that have not defrauded ones? So these are some, we should check us. It's a self-check stuff. We should look at what are the kind of characters we celebrate in society. Those that come with big cars around without asking questions. You say, well, they're in power, we must join the moving train. Who not join the moving train, Sabi? You know, that kind of talk. Don't you know what your friends are doing? What is the mother telling the young girl? Don't you know what the boys are doing now? What is the father saying? All I need to do now is to borrow money and so that my son can get a laptop. And then from there, we'll settle the remaining. What are you saying? Does it make sense? Those days, if you are being indicted or being accused, it's as bad. I mean, maybe a family is known for they have done something wrong. It will continue to linger on from generation to generation. And nobody wants to have anything to do with them. But today, isn't no. That's basically what we should look at. So it's a two-sided thing. Both those elected into office and those that are electing them. They should check themselves. Why will you collect that money? Why not opt for the other part? That no, thank you.
Anyway, we understand that apart from the political implication that this may mean for South Africa also owe a kind of a corporate, implication, a corporate stance, you may want to say, to uphold before the world, because we understand that most multinational companies have their headquarters in South Africa. As a matter of fact, most of them originate from South Africa. The ShopRite is there, MTN is there, and of course, one or two big multinational companies are all there. So this is enough reason why South Africa cannot afford not to withstand what they believe in, because the world is watching. Exactly. If at the end of the day they don't live by the expectations of what people expect, of what the world expects, then of course it's going to begin to affect their corporate relationship with other nations of the world. I mean, the South Africa that we know may not want to be labeled as a very corrupt a country that aid and abets corruption. And
That's
of course, they don't want to be labeled in that way. So
That's
you see that Cyril Ramaphosa has a very big question to answer. So we pray that he withstands the storm that is before him now. We pray that he has the ability to stand the storm that is before him. Because from all look of things, though the barrister here has said that investigations are still ongoing. He's a lawyer, he's a barrister, so we always talk in that regards.
That's how everybody should talk.
But we know, you and I know that from the look of things, Cyril Ramaphosa may not stand.
No, when you say I know, I don't have no, he's not.
You know, that's your belief. I mean, from what you said so far. But you and I know that from all indications, Cyril Ramaphosa may not stand this.
It may just be the option. It may just be an exception to the rule. There's always an exception to every rule.
Anyway, I want to say a very big thank you to Dr. Patrick Awoside.
It's my pleasure.
Coming anytime we invite you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so just like what we said, that let us keep our fingers crossed. So until the ANC meets in some few days' time and they decide the fate of Cyril Ramaphosa, we cannot say whether he will run for next election in 2024. My name is Evan Sunokuge. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and God bless you.